So about that with the Yom Yom, it basically says that there's a time when every single thing a person saw or heard or experienced somehow was just simply meant to be a lesson for them in their service to the divine. And this is basically God created man, and the universe is this interactive stage where God is peering through and looking at man and his deeds, and man is peering through the universe and looking at God and understanding God and his level. Of course, like it says, no thought can grasp God, and my thoughts aren't your thoughts, the prophet tells us about God. But on our part, we're supposed to understand as much as we can about our invisible creator. We're supposed to nurture within us a passion, a love, a real lust towards God, and also at the same time a real dread, a real fear, a real embarrassment, considering who and what God is as a spiritual entity, and who and what we are as flawed entities. But of course, the point is not to become despondent. It's not that God created perfect people to do perfect things. He created us to try to serve Him as good as well as possible on our own level every day, trying to do a little bit more. So Yud Tes Kislev was basically this acceptance, spiritually also as well, that what the Alter Rebbe was doing was accepted on high, and that he was going to be released. Remember, when they incarcerated you in Tsarist Russia, it could have been the end. It could have been, you'd be sentenced to death. The Alter Rebbe writes in chapter 1 of Tanya, the opening of Tanya, the difference between the soul source of the Jew and the non-Jew. And it's labeled as racist, as elitist, as separatist. Any negative thing you want to put on it, it's true. And the Alter Rebbe is saying, according to Kabbalah, what he knows, what he was taught from the Baal Shem Tov, from the Maggid, and what they were taught from the Rashbi and from Rabbi Kiva and all these great geniuses. And he wasn't embarrassed to write it down. And they asked him after, they asked him I think 22 or 21 questions, something, and they finally get to this question: how could you write this about the Jew versus the non-Jew? And the story goes that he smiled, and they went on to the next question, and then they released him. So when they asked him, what does it mean he smiled? So he said, what I understood was, I had answered them correctly in the previous 20 whatever questions. If I wanted to, I could have answered them exactly right. But it would have been embarrassing, it would have been not nice to the non-Jew. So I smiled as to say, do you want me to answer? I can, but better off you should just accept that I know the truth, and I wrote it down, and I don't want to get into a lengthy discussion about it. It's not so complimentary. Anyway, but how does Yud Tes Kislev affect us today is the question. Jewish holidays don't celebrate themselves. The simple passing on the calendar from night to day doesn't make a holiday have transpired. A holiday isn't something in Judaism, which is something that happened 3,020 years ago. We got the Torah, so we should on Shavuos eat milk, and we should read the Tikkun Lil Shavuos. That's not what a holiday is. A holiday is more than a commemoration. A holiday is a positive directive. A holiday is a chance to refocus your spiritual life and your spiritual energies, to charge them up. It's an admission that life wears on you, and it gets tough to be spiritually motivated the whole time when you're surrounded with your physical job, and with news stories that are so negatively slanted, with gross base realities, with your inclinations towards all kinds of physical desires and physical treats, that life wears on you. So every once in a while, God grants you, and it happens every Rosh Chodesh, it happens every Shabbos. Without every Shabbos, you couldn't literally do it. But it happens on the calendar in the way of Chassidus on Yud Tes Kislev, this new year. And for me, I just happen to be one of these people who Gemara, it doesn't cut it for me. I mean, it's beautiful. It's didactic. It's the genius of Gemara. I can't put into words, because it's like, talk about going into every little detail that could possibly be in a case. The Gemara doesn't leave one stone unturned, and it gets into such intellectual, I would call intellectual fantasies, intellectual extremities. I mean, cases that you would never in your wildest dream imagine could happen. And basically it gets into them, and it tells you what the halacha would be in a certain case. However, having said that, it leaves something to be left desired in my own little soul that happens to be in this body in this lifetime, and that it doesn't teach me how to see my interpersonal relationships with people. It doesn't teach me how to interact with people. It doesn't teach me how God wants me to interact with His universe in the most comprehensive way. And what does this, for me personally, there was Musar before Chassidus, and Musar does teach you how to do this. Musar is beautiful. There's so many books. Chavas Levas, the first one comes to mind. It's books of Musar. They're really inspiring, but they do it in a way of almost like fear, and in a way of like a way of like command and dread. Whereas Chassidus came about, and it was kind of like out of love and out of basically an increase in knowledge. That the Baal Shem Tov was convinced that the more you knew about spiritual realities, the more you knew about Kabbalah, the more you can make these things personal to you, the more intense your love and longing would be for God, and the more actual fear and dread you'd have of God, and this would affect you to love all the Jews in the way that's prescribed by the Torah, even according to Hasidic doctrine, which is above and beyond that's which is described according to religious doctrine, religious Jewish doctrine, and it would make you a spiritual entity, and this is really the cry of the Torah, and this is why the Torah doesn't disappear, is because basically what the cry is become spiritual. I know I made you physical. You can see, you have your senses, you have your world around you physically, and I know that you can see what you can see. But God is demanding of us become spiritual. And really, I don't know how Jewish history evolved the way it did up until with the Tanya, because by the Tanya, and I always say the Torah tells you what to do. The Tanya tells you how to do what to do. It's basically it's an explanation of the pasuk. It says on the title page, "Ki karva alecha davar me'od befivcha uvavcha lasoisei." Because this thing could be either the mitzvah of tshuva, or there's another explanation that the entire Torah is very close to you in your mouth and in your heart to do it. And the Alter Rebbe basically describes in Tanya that these three garments of the soul, thought, speech, and action, they are garments of the soul. The soul can enclose himself in it. And when you're connected to godliness, when you do it in a way of what God commands, then you're a vehicle, a chariot for godliness. And when you do it the other way, you're a chariot, as it were, for the other side of holiness, for the Sitra Achra, the other side. So Yud Tes Kislev, to me, is a time to sit, and even if you can't organize a Farbrengen where you live, but just to sit by yourself in Farbrengen, just to sit down with yourself, and some people have a mashka or whatever it is, a drink, just to ask yourself, really, where are you going? What are you doing? What is going to be, if you were to project your current last year from Yud Tes Kislev into Yud Tes Kislev, if you projected 80 years, or if you're, make a deadline for yourself. Without deadlines, humans don't function. This is why death, in essence, is actually a gift, but may one day speedily be repealed from us as a gift. But without deadlines, you wouldn't function. Just say, if this last year, if I accomplish as much as I do this next year, will I be happy with it? Then drag it out 5 years, then do it 10 years. Yud Tes Kislev is a wake-up call in the middle of the winter for the Jew, before Hanukkah, to tell him, to ask him, are you acting in the way of Hasidic doctrine? Are you engaging your mind intellectually in Hasidic concepts? The greatest gift ever bestowed upon man is his intellect. And man can choose to put his intellect into so many things, sundry topics. I mean, from science to art to literature. I mean, there's so many things. And when he chooses to engage himself intellectually in Hasidic doctrine, Hasidic concepts, he experiences an awakening of the mind that can only be expressed and only be explained by experiencing it actually yourself. And this is actually to a downfall of it, that you can't give over to someone else the beauty of Hasidus until they sit down and read it themselves. So I encourage you, it's Yud Tes Kislev, it's a week away. By Hey Tavis is a big book sale in Kahas, 50% off almost all the books there. Go online, get one book, and just open it and read it, and see how it explains to you in a very real, down-to-earth way